don't watch horror to escape reality. We watch it to survive reality.
Why do we slow down to stare at car crashes? Why do horror films dominate box offices and true crime podcasts top the charts? Is it mere curiosity, or is there something deeper, something primal, pulling us toward the grotesque, the violent, the forbidden? Humanity's fascination with the macabre isn't a cultural fluke. It's a mirror held up to our darkest instincts, a reflection of the parts of ourselves we dare not acknowledge in polite society. We pretend to be repulsed, yet we can't look away. Why? Because the macabre strips away the illusions of civilization and forces us to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of human nature. It reminds us that beneath the thin veneer of morality, we are still animals, wired for survival, drawn to danger, and intoxicated by the thrill of transgression. The macabre doesn't just entertain us, it reveals us, and that's why it terrifies and enthralls us in equal measure. Consider the ancient Romans packing the Colosseum to witness gladiators butcher each other, or the public executions of medieval Europe, where crowds gathered to watch men hang, burn, or be torn apart. Fast forward to today, and the spectacle hasn't disappeared. It's just been sanitized, digitized, repackaged for modern consumption. We've traded blood-soaked arenas for serial killer documentaries, but the underlying impulse remains the same. We crave the macabre because it forces us to grapple with mortality, with power, with the fragility of order. It's a controlled descent into chaos, a way to flirt with darkness without being consumed by it. But here's the uncomfortable question. What does it say about us that we need this dance with death to feel alive? What is it about the forbidden that electrifies the human mind? Why do we obsess over what we're told to avoid? The macabre thrives on taboo, on the things society deems too disturbing, too shameful, too real to discuss openly. And yet, we whisper about them in the dark, binge-watch documentaries about murderers, and dissect tragedies with morbid fascination. This isn't just idle curiosity, it's rebellion. The taboo represents power, the ultimate defiance of social norms, and the macabre is its most potent weapon. When we engage with the grotesque, we're not just consuming content, we're challenging authority, testing boundaries, probing the limits of what we're allowed to think and feel. Think about the most infamous taboos in history: death, violence, sex, the occult. These are the subjects that religions, governments, and moral guardians have tried to suppress, and yet they persist, thriving in underground cultures and subversive art. Why? Because the human mind is wired to seek what is hidden. The forbidden carries an irresistible allure, a promise of secret knowledge, of truths too dangerous for the masses. The macabre, then, is more than entertainment, it's a form of resistance. It dares to ask, who decides what we're allowed to see? Who gets to dictate what's too far? When we indulge in the macabre, we're not just satisfying a dark curiosity, we're reclaiming autonomy over our own minds. But here's the paradox. The more we consume the macabre, the more it consumes us. Where is the line between fascination and obsession? Between curiosity and corruption? We tell ourselves we live in a civilized world, a world of laws, of order, of predictability. But the macabre shatters that illusion. It whispers in our ear, "You are not safe. Never were, never will be." And that's precisely why we can't resist it. Our obsession with horror, with true crime, with the grotesque, is not just about thrill-seeking. It's about rehearsing catastrophe. Every time we watch a serial killer documentary or a zombie apocalypse film, we're subconsciously preparing ourselves for the chaos lurking just beyond the edges of our sanitized reality. We think we're indulging in escapism, but the truth is far darker. We're practicing for the day the mask of civilization slips. Consider how we consume stories of real-life horrors, school shootings, natural disasters, pandemics. We dissect them with clinical precision, as if understanding the mechanics of tragedy will grant us immunity from it. But does it? Or does it only deepen our paranoia, our sense of impending doom. The macabre thrives on this tension between knowledge and helplessness. It offers us the seductive lie that if we stare into the abyss long enough, we can tame it. But the abyss doesn't care, stares back, indifferent. And yet, we keep looking. Why? Because the alternative, admitting that we are fragile, temporary, at the mercy of forces beyond our control, is far more terrifying than any horror story. The macabre doesn't just entertain. It exposes the lie at the heart of modernity, that we are the architects of our fate. From Dracula to Hannibal Lecter, from Jack the Ripper to the Joker, humanity has a long history of turning monsters into icons. We don't just fear them, we admire them. We give them catchphrases, fan clubs, even a perverse kind of respect. Why? Because the monster represents the ultimate rebel, the one who refuses to play by society's rules. In a world that demands conformity, the monster is pure, unfiltered agency. It does what we secretly fantasize about but never dare to do. And that's why we're drawn to it, not in spite of its evil, but because of it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Romanticizing monsters isn't just harmless fascination. It's a form of moral cowardice. By elevating killers and madmen to mythic status, we absolve ourselves of the responsibility to confront the real, banal evil that exists in everyday life. The serial killer becomes a charismatic anti-hero, while the corrupt politician, the abusive partner, the systemic violence we tolerate every day fade into the background. The macabre, in its most insidious form, becomes a distraction, a way to indulge in darkness without addressing the darkness within ourselves and our societies. So ask yourself, when you cheer for the villain, who are you really rooting for? You tell yourself you watch horror films for the adrenaline, the jump scares, the cheap thrills, but that's only half the truth. The real reason you crave the macabre is far more primal. It purges you. Ancient Greeks understood this concept as catharsis, the emotional release that comes from witnessing tragedy. Today, we get the same purge from horror movies, violent video games, and true crime stories. They allow us to channel our deepest fears, our repressed rage, our unspoken anxieties into a controlled explosion of emotion. The macabre doesn't just scare you, it cleanses you. Think about it. When you watch a slasher film, you're not just a passive observer. Subconsciously, you're rehearsing survival. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your mind sharpens. You are, in a sense, preparing for battle. This is why horror fans often report feeling calmer after a good scare. The macabre gives your fear a shape, a name, a narrative. It takes the formless dread of modern life, the existential terror of climate change, economic collapse, or societal decay, and distills it into a monster you can outrun, outsmart, or at least comprehend. That's the paradox. The more you immerse yourself in darkness, the lighter you feel. But what happens when the real world becomes too horrific for even fiction to match? When the nightmares on the screen pale in comparison to the ones in the news? There's a reason the most gruesome moments in history are also the most sensationalized. The Black Death, the Holocaust, 9/11, we recoil at the thought of them, yet we consume books, films, and documentaries about them with morbid hunger. Why? Because suffering, when packaged as spectacle, becomes addictive. It transforms pain into narrative, chaos into order, victims into characters. The macabre doesn't just document tragedy, it aestheticizes it. And in doing so, it allows us to experience horror without truly feeling it. This is the dark bargain of modern media. It turns real agony into content. A school shooting becomes a true crime episode. A war zone becomes a backdrop for a thriller. Even our own tragedies get repackaged as binge-worthy drama. We tell ourselves we're bearing witness, raising awareness, honoring the dead. But are we? Or are we just feeding our own insatiable appetite for sensation? The line between empathy and exploitation blurs with every click, every view, every viral post. And the macabre thrives in that ambiguity. It asks, is there any way to consume suffering ethically? Or does the act of consumption itself make us complicit? This isn't just cultural, it's biological. Our ancestors who ignored danger died. The ones who lingered to study it, to understand it, survived. That's why your pulse quickens when you see blood. Why your eyes lock onto a car crash. Why your brain won't let you look away from a horror scene. You are hardwired to obsess over the macabre because, for millions of years, that obsession kept your species alive. The grotesque wasn't entertainment, it was intelligence. A way to learn the rules of a merciless world. But evolution didn't account for the 21st century. Now, instead of studying predators to avoid them, we binge-watch fictionalized versions from the safety of our couches. Our primal instincts remain, but they've been hijacked by an industry that monetizes our deepest fears. The result? A society addicted to simulated danger, numb to real suffering, and perpetually hungry for the next shock. We've taken an ancient survival mechanism and turned it into a commodity. The question is, are we mastering our instincts, or are they mastering us? Follow the money. Who profits from humanity's bottomless appetite for darkness? Media conglomerates, tech platforms, and governments all have stakes in keeping us hooked on the macabre. Fear is the oldest tool of control, and what is horror but fear distilled into a product? The more we consume manufactured nightmares, the more we ignore systemic injustices. While you're obsessing over a serial killer's backstory, you're not questioning why mental health care remains inaccessible. While you're debating which horror movie villain was right, you're not organizing against real-world oppression. This is the ultimate magic trick. They've convinced us to willingly consume our own distraction. But it goes deeper. The macabre serves as a pressure valve for societal rage. By channeling our collective anxieties into fictional monsters and true crime villains, we vent just enough steam to remain docile in our daily lives. The rage that should be directed at corrupt systems gets redirected toward safe targets: zombies, ghosts, long-dead serial killers. Meanwhile, the living architects of suffering, the war profiteers, the polluters, the oligarchs, operate in plain sight, untouched. Ask yourself, why do we have entire channels dedicated to historical atrocities, but no primetime shows dissecting modern corporate crimes? The macabre isn't just entertainment. It's a carefully curated diversion from the horrors we could actually change. In an age of dying religions and hollow consumerism, we've made horror our new theology. The rituals are all there: the midnight screenings, congregations, the fan theories, scripture analysis, the shared lexicon of references, liturgy. We worship at the altar of the unsettling because it's the only thing left that makes us feel something real. The macabre doesn't just scare us. It baptizes us in sensation, reminding numb modern souls what it means to be truly alive. This explains why the most secular societies consume the most horror. When you remove traditional spirituality, people don't stop craving transcendence, they just find darker substitutes. The haunted house replaces the temple. The jump scare stands in for religious awe. Even our monsters have evolved to fit this spiritual hunger. Vampires are immortal souls damned by their appetites. Zombies are the walking dead devoid of purpose. These aren't just tropes. They're modern morality plays about the perils of soulless existence. The irony? In our quest to escape banality through the macabre, we've turned existential dread into just another product to consume. Here's the hard truth. You'll never stop being drawn to darkness. Nor should you. The macabre is a mirror, a teacher, a pressure valve, but only if you engage with it consciously. The moment it becomes mindless consumption, you've lost. So here's the challenge. Next time you watch a horror film or listen to a true crime podcast, ask not just, does this scare me? But, why does this scare me? What unacknowledged fear is it touching? What societal wound is it exposing? The macabre at its best doesn't just entertain, it illuminates. This is where most fail. They either reject the darkness entirely and miss its lessons, or drown in it and become part of the spectacle. The razor's edge path? To walk through the abyss with your eyes wide open, using the macabre not as escapism, but as a forge for wisdom. Let it sharpen your awareness of real-world horrors. Let it fuel your resistance against manufactured ones. Most importantly, let it remind you, the scariest monsters aren't in films or folklore. They're the ones we've normalized in broad daylight. Now, what will you do with that knowledge?